Welcome to another edition of Top Lines and Tails, your weekly livestock podcast. And as usual, we're sponsored by Harbro, suppliers and manufacturers of quality livestock nutrition. This week on Top Lines and Tails, we're continuing with our series on characters in livestock, and I've got a man with me who's had a huge experience in the livestock industry, both in the cattle and the sheep world. Very well-respected breeder, well-respected stocksman, and very well-respected judge, Danny Wyllie. Welcome to the podcast, Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yeah.
And Danny, let's start at the beginning. Where was it you were born?
Holmes Farm, Dalrymple, Ayrshire.
Okay, you're an Ayrshire boy. I thought you were.
Eldest of 9.
I knew there was a few of There's 9, is there? Okay, there's one or two of those, of course, are prominent boys amongst the trade as well as yourself.
That's right, yeah.
And is it, Alistair and John and Walter would be three boys?
Aye, Walter, and then the youngest brother's Morris. He's the youngest of the family, yeah.
And Danny, but when I knew you, you were shepherd at Robert Graham's, of course, at Airthrey Kerse in the early days. Were you gone there straight from school, Danny?
No, that was, I was in my early 30s, yeah. We're splitting up at home. Father decided, with 5 sons, like, there's no way with the influx of Irishmen coming over. And at that period in time, they were probably averaging 7,500, 8,000 an acre in Ireland, whereas good land in Ayrshire was 2,500 an acre. Mm-hmm. And my dad said, he says, there's no way he could afford to put us all in farms. So he says, I'm going to sell the job up and split up. Then there'd be no arguing when he wasn't there. So we all made our own ways, and that's when I took the job as shepherd with Robert. Yeah.
No fighting between the 9 brothers. That would be some riot, I guess. And Robert, of course, a fantastic entrepreneur and another well-respected man amongst the industry, and obviously well-known with his Limousin cattle. But you were there more as a shepherd, weren't you, in those days? You probably wouldn't be near the cattle at that time.
Yeah, 1985, yeah. John Harvey was the stock cattleman at the time, yes. And I took the job on to manage the pedigree Suffolk flock.
Right.
That's what the job was like, and it was only that year that Robert left to go down to the Royal Show and come back. I was busy, like, dozing lambs, and then they come back, and he said, I've got an apology to make to you. He says, I've seen a new breed of sheep. He said, I think they've got a future. And I said, what's these like? And I was quite interested in using the blue domain at that point. Mm-hmm. He says, these are no blues. He says, these are red. I says, what are they? He says, Rouge de L'Ouest. Where did they come from? He says, France. I says, brother, we've got enough breeds out of France already. I said, there surely can't be another one. And he says, we have a future for these, like. Mm-hmm. And it was the following week, he said he'd bought a stock ram and 3 shearling ewes with the option of buying a few more when we went down to Michael Glitzon's at Cirencester. Okay. The following week, yeah.
Would they have come in on a ballot back then, Danny?
No, they came in privately to Michael Glitzon and Peter Platt.
Okay.
Had brought them in. Uh-huh. And then that was in July, end of July, beginning of August, and then it wasn't until October there was a load come in from France, like ewe lambs mainly, yes. Mm-hmm. And later that year they had a ballot, and that's what I'm saying. There were so many breeders. Well, it was the following year actually, because it was a good Rouge ram, like, and we put them to had about a dozen different breeds of sheep, from lowland breeds to hill breeds. And that following summer, we booked a stand on the NSA.
Right.
That was the start. I had all these crossbred lambs by the Rouge sire, like. Mm-hmm. And on the Sunday, when I walked into the Highland Show, get them off the wagon, I couldn't get the sheep properly finished, bedded and done up, because there was that many people coming at me.
Coming around you. Would it be slightly after the Blues? Because, I mean, I remember them saying it was Bluedomania with the Blues,
right.
wasn't it?
That was probably 4 or 5 years after the Blues was originally brought in, Andy, yeah.
And just go back to the Suffolks a second, then were you running a decent flock of Suffolks back there at Airthrey Kerse? Were you
yes, with 120 ewes, pedigree Suffolks, yeah.
In and amongst the big monies back then?
Not really. Had a chap called Jim Buckenlight, and they bought a ram from Mayors of Muiresk, because I was actually at the sale looking for one for myself back home, and they paid 8,000. I wasn't a lover of him because he wasn't big enough and long enough for me. Anyway, they paid 8,000 for him, and unfortunately, he proved to be just what he was. He was far too short and dumpy. He never grew, because the day I went up for the interview, we met in the office at Airthrey Kerse, had a coffee like, and he says, you want to see a few limousines before we went across, because the sheep were at a farm called Colbeg at the time, and so I'll show you some limbs, and we'd walk around the limbs originally, like, and I was amazed how quiet they were, and that was 1985.
Yeah, okay.
The cows and calves lying in the shed, like, yeah.
Because they had a wee reputation. We'll maybe go on to the limbs in a minute, but they had a wee reputation back then for being the opposite of that, didn't they? Not Graham's, I don't mean, but within the breed.
Exactly. Oh yeah, there was really mental ones in the breed, like, because the French were getting rid of their bad strains.
That's right.
When the boom come on, yeah. But anyway, we went out to Quebec to see these Suffolks, like, and the first pen he took me in was a pen of shearling tops. And there'd be about 25, 30 shearling tops running in this big new sheep shed as well, up like the previous year. And here's this little stocky bone, like tree trunks, like running past. I said, he hasn't grew much, Robert. He said, you recognise him? I said, I could never forget him. I said, I thought there was an extra zero on the end of his price tag last year. He said, he wished I'd spoke to you then. He said, he's not to me shepherd at the time.
That's a good way to get yourself through an interview, telling him he's paid 10 times too much for his stocked up. But
that's right. Well, that's me, Andy, as you know. Always straight in the chin, yeah.
Absolutely, Danny. And we'll not dwell on it, but some of those sheep that were coming down from Turriff at that time, they were that well done that they didn't grow a lot when they went south, did they?
Yeah, just under. Yeah, you couldn't compete with them. Yeah,
they'd done the growing by the time they left home, hadn't they? A lot of those sheep.
Oh yeah.
So going back to the Rouge, then, so you're settled in then with and these Rouge sheep arrive there, and a lot of our listeners, probably overseas listeners, won't even know what a Rouge de L'Ouest sheep looks like. But they're a big beast. They'd be bigger than a Suffolk, wouldn't they? And a big bright red head and big lugs, right. And cocky looking sheep, aren't they?
That's right, Andrew. And really milky, with a tremendous job of the lambs, like. Even the crossbreds, like, but and a lot of them was like anything else that was imported. There was a lot of bad skin ones imported originally, like, heavy skin, far too heavy skin.
Would you put them across some of the Suffolks as well? That'd be an interesting cross, I
guess. We put them over Suffolks, Suffolk cross half-breds, blackface, swales, with the Beulahs, Welsh Beulahs.
All right, yeah.
With umpteen breeds, like, and that's what I'm saying. They were fantastic doing lambs, like.
And there was a bit of a jockeying for position between the Blues and the Rouge at that time. In fact, a lot of breeders had both, didn't they?
You're right. Yes, yeah, because one of the first gentlemen to approach me was Keith Brooke, and he was actually chairman of the Blackface Sheep Association at the time.
Right.
Because he's bonny coloured and mule ewe lambs, like, off the Blackface ewe. And he wouldn't believe it when I told him they're by a French sire. Yeah. And he was actually the first name in the book for an order to buy 2 or 3 females, yeah, Kerse. And
you built those up, Robert and yourself built that flock up to fairly big flock, but kept the quality.
Up. That's right. We had 30 Blue Domains, and we built the Rouge up towards 100, 80 to 100.
Really?
It was roughly. But we used to sell a lot I can remember the first Rouge sale at Carlisle Market, and we had 37 ewe lambs in the 2 pens, and the late George McElraith from Balig was next door to us. Across the passageway, obviously, kind of about an hour in front of us, going through the ring, and him and Robert were standing, and there was serious interest in these lambs, kind of more or less going horse, and Robert talking to people, like. And Robert Graham says to George, he says, whoever tops the average between us can buy the tea on the road home tonight in the Metal Bridge. And George and John was only a lad at the time, and they come out the ring nearly an hour and 5 minutes before us, like, and the average 1,487, I think, or 88 guineas.
Yeah.
And then we went through an hour and a quarter, an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and a quarter later, and we averaged 1,499 guineas exactly for 37 ewe lamb.
Wow, that's serious money. That's serious money back then, isn't it? For
Well,
that
not
breed?
just, Andy, yeah.
And some of these sheep, of course, coming in wouldn't have come in too dear. I know we were over there buying blue domains and not Rouge. It's not Rouge, but we were buying blues, and some of these sheep would be coming in at 200 or 300 quid. Some of these ewes, they weren't be able to bring in serious profit.
Yeah, decent ewe lambs at 250, 260, yeah.
Robert Graham's always renowned, and again, our listeners don't know Robert Graham now, runs Graham's Milk, of course, in a massive way of business, but always been a great businessman. Always had his eye on the pounds, and a great businessman. He made the figures stack up, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
At the time as well, of course, he would be getting to be Mr. Limousine as well. He would be hitting the straps with the limousines.
That's right.
By then.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic limousines, yeah.
And I'd be guessing that Davy Cormack came in round about that time when you were there for the limousines?
Yeah, end of 86, beginning of 87.
Yeah. And again, we would be making, of course, serious money with the limousines at the same time.
Yes. We're selling them to America in these days, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've certainly covered
because one of the first bulls, me being shepherd, can obviously interested in cattle as well, and this was with John Harvey before David come. I think it was at the back end of 85 or the spring of 86. I've just forgotten exactly, but these two good bulls. And he says, would you go with John? And it was at Banbury. The sale was at Banbury.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I want these bulls up in the air, so they catch the eye when people come,
mm-hmm.
And because we took two round bales for straw, and it was a big bull anyway, the Quebec, because he had the two prefixes at that time, with the Quebec prefix. And anyway, the bull was 20,000 to America, yeah. It was a hell of a bull,
We did a podcast on the limousine breed a while back, and I remember a story of that bull going away, I think, and the big money.
Yeah.
And how long would you have stayed then at Robert Graham's? 5 or 6 years?
6 years, mm-hmm. Roughly 6 years, and and it was due to the wife, and I split up. I would never have been left,
Yeah. And during that time, you'd keep the Rouge going. Were they still in popularity when you came away? Because obviously they've fallen from grace a wee bit. They fell from grace a wee bit in the 90s, didn't they? Or late 90s, I suppose.
That's right. Yes.
And some people would question. I think at the time they were setting them out to be a female breed, weren't they? And as you said, crossing with these various things. Would they question their ability to survive the weather? Maybe on the hill. Was that one of the?
That's right. Yeah. You could like a lot of other breeds can. The blue Leicesters are the same. You can get real bare ones. It's just your luck of the draw, how they cross. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was the biggest problem with some of the Rouge crosses. They were too bare coated.
Yeah.
You got a rough day. Hypothermia would set in very quickly. Yeah.
And I'd be right in thinking Steve Jones replaced you up there. Did Steve come up there from Esmos, or did I?
Yes, that's right. And when I left, Billy Bothwick took over as shepherd.
Okay.
And Steve Jones came in as a manager,
Okay, so I certainly remember Steve was still bringing the blues and the Rouge, and Steve had a few blues of his own as well at that time, and he was very much an oppo of my old man's. I think around about that time there'd be
that's right, and
be a hard man to beat as you are yourself. And another name I'm going to throw in there, I think Callum Hillhouse. I'm not sure if Callum was there when you were there, but
that's right. Callum was my understudy. Yes, a good lad like Callum, so he was.
Absolute top end lad down in England now, and breeding a few Angus, and
that's right.
Still doing doing well.
He's done really well, and he's very shown, him and Emma,
and
Angus's,
and from there, was that when you went down to Coley in Staffordshire, or am I missed a bit?
Yeah, well, already met Jane, and that's what I'm saying. I was just my head was getting frazzled, with the ex. And I decided, Robert was away in Canada at the time, and I decided to head south, and then I put an advert in the paper looking for work, and that's when I took the job with Barry Baggett, Ben Baggett, Coley, pedigree Charolais,
That's right, he had pedigree Charolais. He had some Charolais there, I think, when you got there, did he? He would have had
That's right, yes, with a hell of a good cow, Blealac Cardella.
Mm-hmm.
12,000 guineas he'd paid for it. One of the original Christmas crackers there.
And she went on to be a show cow for you, didn't she?
Oh yeah, won a lot of championships. Yeah, because we were competing against the late Mr. McDonald, that grade at the time down here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it travelled well, and I remember the good herd of cattle there, and later on you started a flock of Texel sheep there as well, so you've gone into a different breed now, and I think that was your doing, wasn't it?
It was, yes. He wanted to start pedigrees, yeah, and then again he went away over the top of my head one day. He disappeared and he came back. And we started buying at Lanark. The original 2 purchases were from John Forsyth.
That's right.
Glenside. Mm-hmm. And that was as a ewe lamb at the back end sale, and brought her out, and she actually won the sheep interbreed at Three County Show. That was the first outing.
First outing, okay.
Yeah,
that's a big interbreed to win as well, isn't it? And
that's right.
Only show youngsters at the Three County Show, don't they? They only show shearlings and gimmers. There's no old sheep there as well.
That's right. That's right. And he built it up. He went away and they bought Griff Morris's flock privately.
Okay.
Griff had decided to sell up at the time, and anyway, I set off with a wagon to Griff's light, yeah. Mm-hmm. The following week, to pick these, about 70 heads, yeah.
I remember you having some decent lambs in there, and I think, would it be when you left there, maybe a little bit later on, that I came in there and I bought the stocked up Glenside Aristocrat off you from there.
Ah, yes, yeah.
He did well for me. And meanwhile, the Charolais, as I said, what sort of numbers of Charolais would you had there at Barris?
At Coley, I did 24, 25 cows this year, yeah. I was only 18 months there, and that's when we got the tenancy. We acquired the tenancy of Pessel Farm, yeah.
Going to go on to that. Yeah. So you took the tenancy, which is in Pessel Farm, is in Staffordshire, and you and Jane took that tenancy between you, did you?
Yeah.
And of course, another oppo of ours as well, Jane Malabar would have. And her father would have been another thorn in our side in those days when my father and we were showing blue domains, and always had some good blue domains. And
yes.
And did you keep a few of those blues when you went on to Purcell?
No, we didn't, because she'd actually sold them before, just before Jeff had sold them. Uh-huh. The year before we got the tenancy, yeah.
What year was that, Danny?
Yeah, 89 or 90, and they sold them up.
And then on Pessel, I'm right in thinking you went into Charolais cattle then, didn't you, to start with anyway?
Yes, I started, I was freelancing with a small acreage, and I was actually intended to keep the job on at Coley, but Mr. Baggett thought elsewise.
Okay.
That's when we parted company, when he knew with the tenancy as a holding
Uh-huh.
And anyway, I did a bit of freelancing at the time, and I built up a herd of 12 females just within about 18 months.
Right.
And then I was doing a sale at the old Fradley, the new Fradley market. The late Jack Young was the auctioneer, and John, Black and White Sires is now down Cambridge way. Yeah, anyway, he approached me at the market, he says, because I'd been using the blue commercially a little bit and a few commercial cows, and I always fancied the blue, even when I was at Robert Graham's, because two of the best cows in the breed at the time. And
Robert had blues as well, of course, didn't he, back then?
Yeah, and that's when I fell in love with the blues. And anyway, I decided, John, he came at me at this sale, and John Minshew's sale, and we're just starting the maiden heifers, and I'd Paul give me a hand. And John came at me. He says, "Tell me, your Charolais might be for sale." I says, "They could be if the money's right." Mm-hmm. Well, he says, "Be any chance of going out and having a look?" I says, "When?" Well, he says, "Just now." Well, I says, "Look." I says, "You see, I'm busy here." I says, "It'll be another 2 hours if I'm home." Mm-hmm. So anyway, I phoned one of my brother-in-laws in the Navan farm. And I says, "Could you go and show this man these Charolais cattle?" And when I got home that night, he'd written out a note, make me an offer. And we're actually, what I'd thought in my head were £500 short. He was £500 short on 12. There was 12 cows, 10 cows, 2 in-calf heifers, and there was 5 calves. And anyway, I was to phone him before 7:30, and this was 7:10 I got home because he said he was going out. And I phoned him. I says, "Look, John," I says, "I could do that extra 500. Well, he said, "I'll tell you what," I said, "you deliver them. So I'll give you your extra 500. And I actually delivered them the following morning because there was no TV and such in them days. And David Benson got to hear about it and gave me the biggest rollick and he said, "What are you going to hit the Charolais for?" So you'll regret that. The following year, I'd kept this bull calf, a good bull calf, and the following year, I finished up reserve supreme champion at Perth, bull sales.
All right.
Yeah.
Get him away a decent trade.
Yeah, well, it wasn't big enough. It was 7-8. Aye, Tamhorn Mustard was his name. Yeah.
Okay. And you probably, at that time, as you said, Benna would be wondering, because, of course, the Charolais would still be flying back then, and they had a bit of a doldrum later on.
That's right, and they were just, they were really taking off in them days, yeah.
And then we go on to the blues, which more people will know you for, of course, and as you said, under the Tamhorn prefix that you started the blues. And how did you start with them, Danny?
Aye, well, that's the saying. I got the bug when I was in the 6th year at Airthrey Kerse. With a couple of cows, and we did a bit of flushing, but they were before their time in the mid-80s. Right. They were so, what we refer to now as, well, the breed is now called British Blues. Originally, they were Belgian Blues, and there was a couple of 3 men in the country, mentioned no names, were going out to Belgium and bringing in rejects from the herds in Belgium, and they were being put in the British market as Belgian Blues, like. Anyway, father-in-law was very keen at the time, and he'd had a bad heart condition, and he was really keen, and I said, right, we'll go with it, and we went out to Belgium. I couldn't believe it. Well, first one we actually bought was at Chelford Market from the late Dennis Lomas at Congleton.
Dennis was a very able man, wasn't he? And a dairy breeder as well, but in Scimitars, and Dennis he'd always have good walking cattle. He always liked to see him moving, didn't he?
That's right, mobile cattle, and we finished up buying Glebedale Jane, same name as the good lady, in calf heifer, and she produced Tamhorn Millie, and that was in the back end of '95, and she was female champion at 20 months old at the Royal Show.
Really? Okay.
Stoneleigh, yeah.
I'd be showing against you back then. I think I was involved in the breed.
Yeah. And she was pure white, like, and actually we soaked her up with a Charolais soap because much to the disgust of Mr. Barber and Mr. Brindley and company that day. And I'll never forget it. It was a really wet year, and we're out in interbreed, beef interbreed, like, and Jane was always leaning. It was her baby, like, and I was behind with a stick. And I'll never forget Cyril Miller and David Benson coming out the Charolais stand to watch her walk past, because we were right up in front of the Charolais stand, the interbreed ring that day. And Cyril come down the lines afterwards. He says, "God," he says, "there are many like that in the breed." I says, "Unfortunately, Cyril, at the moment, no." And Cyril wanted to buy her off us that night, but I knew there'd be a divorce. A good lady if I sold her. That was 97, and
Cyril was always a man that could persuade most people to sell anything, wasn't he? Well, still is, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah. But no, that was, we prided ourselves in mobility, like, and I think that was part of the reason the herd was so successful, right?
Indeed, but just going back to you building the herd up, you went out to Belgium and bought a few more, but you'd be looking in a different place to maybe where everybody else had been looking.
Danny. Yes, yeah, completely, Andrew. Yeah, I was amazed when we went out to Belgium. We went to first trip was an organised trip through the society, like Jane, father-in-law, and myself, and it was about 30 odd in the bus. And I was amazed, Ken. In these days, it was these really, as I say, rejects that was coming in the early 80s. And people, I've seen odd ones going up to Perth in these days. And the proper stockmen would just laugh at them because they were so bad mobility, like, just these droopy backsides, like. And I was amazed. So was late father-in-law Jeff and Jane, like, the real, what we call class mobile cattle. And these were the kind in Belgium that the breeders didn't reckon much to, because they weren't extreme enough muscle, like,
And you brought...
so we imported, we seen these, the first two was off the one herd, the Wolfendreef herd, Tennis Brothers, up Flanders. North Flanders in Belgium. Wolfendrief Noella and Wolfendrief Alala, yeah. They were both 6 months old calves, heifer calves out of 2 tremendous cows. And that was the start of the Tamhorn herds. We brought them home and started the flushing programme, along with Glebedale Jane, yeah.
And wise and experienced man that you are, you'd always know you want to see the mother before you'd buy the calves, so you know what you were buying even when they were that age.
Exactly, Andy, yeah. Because I think the present day, that is a problem with a lot of breeds. People don't follow the family line. They just see a bull or a female in front of them with big fancy figures, and that's the one, like, yeah. We were always learning when we were young, if you go to buy anything, you go into a pen or a line of cattle that's even and well balanced, rather than buy a single good animal, like, yeah.
And as you said, see the mother and the granny as well if you can.
Exactly, and yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And the flushing, who would be doing your flushing back in those days?
Originally it was a chap, I'm sure it's Alex Morton, Australian.
Okay.
Yeah, Alex and Jenny Morton we started with.
Good flushing from the beginning?
Oh, yeah. Well, the one cow, Wolfendrief Noella, when the foot and mouth hit, and then we started up opening the sales again, the late David Dickinson said to me after the first sale, he says, you want your head looking, Wyllie, you should have foot and mouth. And of course, you were keeping it away because we had all these good young females and good brood cows. And because we took 237 grade A embryos out of Wolfendrief Noella in two and a half year.
Wow.
And the progeny at that time were averaging 4,000 off her. And the late David Dickinson said, he says, that won that first cow in your herd, because he was the auctioneer I put down in the form for evaluating the herd. Yeah. And he says, I would have to have given you 100,000 for that one cow. Like.
Well, so you empty that anyway, and not only that, but of course you kept all those youngsters, and that's what built up your herd.
That's right.
And did you ever buy any more females in again in Tamhorn?
Yes, we did. We always would do it. We used to love a trip, right, and just always kept the eye open. Yeah, and we bought not a lot, but regular, because one of the best ones I ever brought in was a Captive de Fouge, she was called. And that was just pre-foot and mouth. And following foot and mouth, we took her out, and she won Stafford County, then she went up, won the Highlands, down to the Royal, won the Royal, and she was the first female in the breed going to go for the treble, the big shows. And she got kicked with a Holstein cow in the Sunday morning in the wash at Belth Wells, and was dead 48 hours later with a hemorrhage.
I remember seeing you talking to you that morning, Danny, when that had just happened, and you were sorry man that day. I remember having that conversation, and you said she's as good a cow as you'd ever seen, you thought, didn't you?
Oh, well, they were all, that's what I'm saying, the Irishmen had come over, hoping to see her, like, they'd never seen her in the flesh, like, and, yeah. Anyway, that's what I'm saying, that was a disaster day, yeah.
Sure. But you built up the herd and up over 100 females, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, at one time, yeah. Between receipts and things, we were up to nearly 200, just on the 210 head on 100 acre holding.
Wow. And churning them out like a money machine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We kept having production sales, and they were our first production sale at Carlisle in 2000, and Shelford 2003, 2005, yeah.
Just kept putting it through the production. And what sires did you use in? I mean, there's a lot of Belgian blue breeders that listen to this podcast, and or more modern British blue, should I say, breeders now. What sires that did you put on those decent calves?
One of the first was one of the highest classified bulls in the breed at the time, was a bull called Crystal de Somme, and that was our original. And then followed on from Crystal, we used a bull called Bankier de Moulin, who was absolute fantastic, big, dark, blue and white, mobile, 1,500 kilo bull.
Really? And did you bring the bulls in? Bring the bulls in, Danny, or are you just using semen?
No, I just in these days, was semen, Andy. Went out to these Belgium X and open like the bull stud, they always used to have these open nights.
Yeah.
And they would parade the bulls, like, yeah. And then we went on farm to see his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. It was just he was the sire of Tamhorn Ringmaster. Yeah.
I was going to mention Ringmaster. He's another bull that did you very well, didn't he? He's a bull that you'll be remembered for, I think.
That's right. He was a fantastic commercial breeder. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Him again was out of Alala, one of the 2 6-month-old heifer calves from Wolfendry. Yeah. And
did you sell him, Ringmaster?
Yeah, he was with Summer Showed, and won a lot of championships. And then he was champion at Carlisle, and it was the end of September in these days, not October. Mm-hmm. And I'd get the offer of 4,000 or 5,000 for him, which was a good price at the time at the shows. And I said, no way, no way. Frank Page followed him all summer, like, and he was so upset that day when I was leading him down the pasture at Carlisle. He said, my brother's going to kill me when I get back home paying 7,000 for a bull.
Yeah. But Frank, again, one of my oppos in the earlier days when we used to be in the fat stock show, and Frank just breed a lot of good show calves, and he knows a carcass and he knows the right beast, doesn't he, Frank?
That's right.
And at 7,000 from that one, but you went on to sell bulls up to 16,000 eventually there, Danny.
Yeah.
And what was that bull?
Crackerjack, Tamhorn Crackerjack, yes.
Who got him?
Henry Harvey, Waxham. Used to be a big dairy herd. One of the top dairy herds in Norfolk.
And you eventually went on and dispersed the Blues, I think, back in, would that be 2012?
Yeah, 2012, yes. Yeah, because I was in partnership with the Charolais with Pete Malabar at the time. We were just getting too many cattle about, and we thought probably the Blues were the ones that would be worth most money at the time. And I dispersed them, decided to have it at Newark, with a good dispersal, right, yeah.
I think the blood would have been bought by quite a few round and about, wouldn't it? You'd have put the backbone in a few herds from that.
That's right, yes, yeah, it did. And came with a fantastic young stock bull at the time, and he went away to commercial herd, unfortunately.
All right.
Tamhorn, formidable, yeah.
And of course, back then you would have kept sheep as well, didn't you? Have Suffolks? Did you get back into the Suffolks again yourself, Danny?
On the mid-90s, we built up 120 block and decided with flushing a lot of Blues, like, and we're trying to build up the Blues, and just we're tight for facilities. Mm-hmm. And they just sold this beautiful heifer calf with its recipient mum in the shed one Sunday morning for 6,000 guineas privately. Mm-hmm. And the guy didn't want it for a fortnight. I said, oh, that's fine. And the Suffolk ewes and lambs, and this was the middle of March, Andy, they were in the lean-to, the opposite side, like, and I knew these heifers and calves were too tight on. And anyway, we shook hands in a deal, and I said, I'll deliver it in a fortnight. And the following weekend, I was busy bedding, and Kerse were getting ready. They could smell the grass growing, and it'd been quite a wet time, and I still hadn't got these Suffolks out. And anyway, these heifers were dancing about in the pens, like, and I was away up 5 or 6 pens up the shed, and I heard this almighty thud, and you could hear the echo in the breeze block wall, like, coming up the shed. I said, God, I hope that was a heifer, not a calf. Mm-hmm. I knew something had got kicked, like, anyway, I ran back down, dropped the fork, and ran back down. And here's this calf I'd sold for 6,000 the previous week, nearly to the hour, lying, dropped down, lying, kicking, like. And one of the mothers had hit it that hard that it ruptured all its intestines, like. It was dead before the vet got there.
Bloody hell.
So that was the decision. We took the decision there and then, that's it. Suffolks are going. Uh-huh. So we dispersed, sold the Suffolks at Carlisle in November 2000, just pre-foot and mouth, yeah.
All right. Get a good trade for them, I suppose. Suffolks were still we wanted back then, wouldn't they?
Yeah, we did. We averaged, I think it was about nearly 400 at the time, but what the most annoying thing was about that, and I'd bought a tup at the National from Cairns the previous year, and like a lot of the Aberdeen ones, they were so pushed at the time, and thinking me, like, it didn't stop the ewes the first turn and a half.
All right.
So with a lot of young lambs, and although I announced it, I was always up front about it, and I said to Carlisle auctioneer at the time, I said, look, we've got all these young ewe lambs, they're not really strong enough to sell, so I said, I'll to them and sell them next year as shearlings. And it was all in the catalogue, like. Anyway, after the hammer went down in the last lot, this guy came at me, a guy called Sam Hamilton from Lockerbie. He says, would you prepare to sell these lambs at home? I said, well, just come down and have a look. I said, yeah, probably if the price was right. And they come down the following week. They offered me £100 a head for them. They were just young, like 5 months old, like that. I was like, I said, yeah, go on. And I said, I could do with getting rid of them. I said, take the lot. And they took the 30-odd ewe lambs, took them home, and decided in the January to top them.
Right.
And foot and mouth kicked in the February. And of course, by the time these ewe hogs were lambing light, they'd been taken out with foot and mouth. And he got one of the Lanark auctioneers that come at the time to value them. And when he told the auctioneer, well, he always says these Danny and Jane Wyllie bred these Suffolks, like pedigree Suffolks, really. But he'd only put them to commercial top.
Right. And
he got £1,000 a head for them.
Oh, jeez.
In the June. Kept them from the December to the June.
Christ.
They paid £100 a head and got £1,000 a head in the June for them.
I hope he sent you a Christmas card. Well, some people get lucky. There you go.
We used to joke about it for years, like, yeah.
It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good, isn't it?
Aye, bless him, I deserved it. I could get cancer not long after that, and the end he's no longer with us.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Shame to hear. We'll just go back to the Blues for a second. What do you reckon to the Blues just now, then? You're 10 years on since you went out of them. They've evolved still? Still evolving, getting better?
Yeah, well, like every other breed, I think there's a lot of people... I think what the biggest for me... And I get a few people saying to me, Kenny, you're not going to start breeding them again. There was one guy come at me. I called in at Carlisle in October on the road up to judge the Shorthorns at Stirling. And I called in the limousine sale, and I get 2 taps on the shoulders. And one was a guy from Hexham. He used to buy 5 or 6 bulls off us over the years. And I could not believe it. That was last year, 2001. He says, we've just put old Fagan away. Well, he bought him in 2011, so he was 10-year-old. And he says, I've had 3 since, Danny, and he says, I'm here buying a limmy, because I can't get these blues to last like your ones used to do. But to me, the biggest downfall of the blues was the colour, Andy. Black. They started going, fashion was black. And they were just forgetting about structure, soundness. If it was black, it was automatically a good one, like, yeah. And that was driven by the commercial man, the suckled calf, fancy calf, for stone market. And to me, the breed suffered for a few years because of it, like, yeah.
We've done a podcast on the Blues in the past, and to start with, they wanted them white, because they were putting them on the dairy cow, and the white ones would show a roan calf, but then the whole thing turned when they started using them on the sucklers, that they wanted the darker ones, didn't they?
That's right.
Fashion, is there any better one way or other, Danny, do you think?
No, I think that's what I'm saying. I think there's too much emphasis on colour and muscle. A lot of them are getting far too short, like, for me, like. We always prided ourselves in length, like, and square plates, not bloody extreme plates, like, yeah.
And a man who knows cattle and sheep, of course, you're in demand as a judge these days, and I don't know how many judging panels your name appears on, Danny, but must be a few.
I'm actually on 7, different breed panels, yeah.
And judging in cattle and sheep, it'll keep you busy through the summer anyway. I don't know how many appointments you take or whether you do if you do.
I'm doing the Buck Trophy again. That's the second time I've been invited to do the Buck Trophy, and I've never known anybody.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, normally you do the Buck Trophy once, that's you. But I'm actually doing the Buck Trophy at the south of England, at Agronley in June.
Okay. If we go back, I'll go into your judging again in a second. But if we go back to the Buck Trophy, of course, are people that don't know that was the most coveted trophy in the beef livestock breed in the UK, wasn't it? At the Royal Show, and Danny, I think you had a hand in winning that one too, didn't you?
Yes. We were reserve. We didn't win. The Blues were reserve at the last Royal Show in 2009, because as a stockman, that was all your ambition, to get up that red carpet at Stoneleigh.
Sure.
And we finished up reserve that day with Bill Bruce, my old judging the interbreed, yeah.
All right, with Blues.
Yeah.
It's an elite club, the ones that have picked that trophy up, that's for sure, and you'll be...
Was it not just? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And you say you've handed it out once, and that's you doing it again. Where did you judge it the last time?
Yeah, I handed it, I forget when it'd be, and it'd be 2014 or something. That was at Bath and West.
Okay.
And it was the Anguses, yeah. Paul Westaway and his dad that won it that day with a pair of Anguses, yeah.
And that shows a man that's impartial, because I wouldn't imagine you're on the Angus judging committee, or maybe you are.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I've always been. I've never been biased at any breed. There's room for all breeds and correctness in all breeds. And I think over the years, a lot of people can bias to their own breeds when they're in interbreed competitions, like the down point other breeds, just to keep the other ones out of the road, like, yeah.
We spoke to Richard Bartle earlier on other podcasts, and Bart always says a good beast is never the wrong colour. And
you're right. Exactly. And the same way sheep. Yeah, yeah.
I think Bart said he was on seven breed judging panels as well. But that's what makes a proper interbreed judge, is when you can judge all those beasts and then go with the beasts that actually you're not even involved in. If it's
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and in the interbreeds, when you're judging pairs, is it about a pair? Do they need to be a pair, or just two good beasts?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a balanced pair, and yeah. It can be difficult in some breeds. It's the same as the blues. That's the biggest problem we have in your blue breed. They never look the same. Like you say, you can have a black one, you can have a blue one, you can have a white one. Mm-hmm. Whereas your Angus, your Limousines, I think, have always got an advantage. Herefords can always the same breed. A lot of breeds are always the same colour. Whereas I think the blue gets disregarded a lot of times, like personally, because of colour, like mixture of colour.
And as a breed judge, you would have one eye on the interbreed trophies when you do these, and you see some people put a young heifer up for an interbreed for a champion in the breed, and of course that gives them a bit of a bad start when it comes to interbreeds, especially if you're going to mix them in pairs. Like you've got to have your eye on the interbreed, haven't you?
That's right. I think when you're judging your own, you've always got your eye and power, like, definitely.
You judged the interbreed at Balmoral, I think, last year?
Yes, I did. 2009, was it 19? I think 2019, yeah.
You've done the Burke, which would be various places, but obviously you'll have you'll still have some more interbreeds that you haven't covered yet in the big shows. I'm mostly on breeds. This time I've got Herefords at Royal Norfolk, Blues and Shorthorns at Royal Bath and West. I forget it. There's a whole list there. I'm sure Jane keeps your calendar right there.
The invites are coming in again already for next year. Yeah.
You maybe got to get to turn down a few eventually, haven't you? When you're in that much demand, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
And we moved on. You mentioned the Shorthorns just now, and of course that's what you're breeding these days, isn't it? The Shorthorn. Yes.
Yeah. Diversified with the Blues. We diversified into Shorthorns as well for another breed in 2004. Yeah.
And still under the Tamhorn prefix.
Not now, no. When I split up with Pete Malabar, it's now the Grovewood prefix, yeah.
Okay. And how's that going? How's the Shorthorns going for you?
He's doing tremendous. It's up to over 100 cows, like.
Yeah.
But he'll no show. But I want them to show, because the first bull he took to Stirling, like, was 12,000, like, but at that time broke the October record, like, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Grovewood Jackson, yeah.
Certainly a breed that's in demand these days anyway.
They're on fire, and absolutely on fire. And like everything else, every other breed, when they become popular and the iron's hot, people strike, like, and there's a lot of overpriced, overrated animals making stupid money, like, yeah. But I think one of the points, a Shorthorn, like, is unbelievable easy fleshing, like.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Yeah, they get too fit a lot. Yeah.
And again, we've talked about the Shorthorns quite a lot recently on these podcasts, and there are different Shorthorns to suit different people, aren't there? They're quite a diverse breed, aren't they?
They are, Andy, yeah. Because when you see a lot of these old photographs from the Scottish farmer recently, going back to the old 60s and 70s, and you see these, they were belt and buckle cattle in these days. and just so easy kept, like. And there's a lot of that type in the breed yet, like.
Mm-hmm.
So they are. But,
and getting them bigger though. They're getting them bigger.
Oh yeah.
And you don't keep any more sheep yourself? There, you've hung up your.
No, I've retired. Well, semi. That's apart for helping Jane. Jane was artist of stock. They wanted to bump the rent in the farm, £60 an acre.
Uh-huh.
3 years ago, and they said, "No, I said, you can get it out of some other mug." Fair enough.
All right. So you're out the farm now.
Yeah, we gave it up 3 years ago. Yeah.
Difficult times now as well, isn't it? There's higher input costs and the rest of it. And,
I just don't know where, and the weather's not helping over here, Andy. Corn now coming to head, like, well, there's nothing on it.
Really? Okay.
Just this dry April, like, yeah.
I know you had a dry time there, but you have keeping your hand in there. You've been lambing. You're telling me lambing a variety of breeds, still getting stuck into.
Oh yeah. Enjoy it, yeah. Now 70 this year and catching these blackface ewes, like, it's a bit of the waltz, the military two-step, and the Canadian barn dance all thrown into. You actually get them on the ground.
But you did tell me you're lambing blackies and lambing them inside. Does that make it easier or not quite so easy?
Yeah, well, personally, I wouldn't be doing it, but this is Chris's idea, this fancy sheep shed, like, yeah, it works well, but you know what blackies are not bred to be restrained, and
no.
They don't like being restrained or being cornered, like. They want to get away all the time, like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the definition of a blackie, right enough. And you did tell me, I think you got some Herdwicks there. What are they like?
Yeah, lamb and they're great mothers, like. Unbelievable. Great mothers. That's one thing about a Herdwick. When it drops its lamb, it'll follow you, like, really? Unlike a blackie. If you've got to intervene. If they don't start licking and you let it go, all you can see is the tail going like a propeller down the field. You need two essentials of lamb and blackies. You need a good crook and a good dog.
Yeah. And a lot of patience.
You're right.
Well, Danny, as you said, you're still lambing just now. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you on the Top Lines and Tails, and a man that's done a lot of things, and we'll still see you about in the show judging ring for a lot of years yet, I think, despite you.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, God willing, Andy. Yeah. He's right, Andy. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tails, and with the show season soon upon us, make sure your animals are in tip-top condition by feeding Harbrough's high-quality range of products, or speaking to their nutritionist to get some of the most expert advice available. And make sure you also stay connected by joining in with Top Lines and Tails Facebook page, which will keep you updated with news from the shows and news from around the industry, as well as information to back up this and other episodes.